You were born a slave. Not metaphorically, not as a way of saying life was hard. Literally, actually, a slave. Captured as a child from a rival tribe. Your family gone, your name changed, your future, as far as anyone could see, already decided. Then a man called Temujin found you. He freed you. Not because he needed another warrior, not because freeing slaves was a principle he preached, but because he saw something in you that the world had tried to bury under years of servitude. He saw someone who could be useful. And in the world that Temujin was building, the world that would become the largest contiguous empire in the history of the human race, useful was the only thing that mattered. Not your bloodline, not your tribe, not your family name or the clan you were born into. What you could do, how far you were willing to go, whether you could be trusted absolutely when everything depended on it. That was the Mongol system, and it turned the entire ancient world upside down. This is your life, as every rank in the Mongol warrior world.
Rank 1, Hirachi. Let us be completely honest about where the Mongol world began for most people who rose through it. The bottom was not glamorous. It was not the open steppe and the free wind and the galloping horses that people picture when they think of Mongolia. It was servitude. The Hirachi, the bound servant, was a person who belonged to someone else, captured in the constant intertribal raids that defined the Mongolian steppe before GenghisKhan unified it, or born into a household that already held such people. You worked constantly. The horses that the Mongol way of life absolutely depended upon needed feeding, grooming, training, and medical attention every single day. The gurs, the circular felt tents that the Mongol families lived and moved in, needed to be assembled, maintained, and taken down when the tribe moved. And the tribe always moved. The nomadic life meant everything had to be portable, everything had to be managed, and the people who did that managing were often the Hirachi. The work was hard, but here is what made the Mongol system different from almost every other ancient hierarchy you have encountered on this channel. GenghisKhan broke the tribal system deliberately. In the old Mongolian world, your tribe determined everything. You fought for your tribe, you were loyal to your tribe, you lived and died within the boundaries your tribe defined. But Temujin looked at that system and saw its fatal weakness. Tribal loyalty created ceilings that talent could not break through. So he abolished it. He reorganized the Mongol army on a completely new principle. Units were deliberately mixed from different tribes so that loyalty transferred from the tribe to him personally and to the unit. A man who proved himself in battle could rise from Hirachi to warrior to officer, regardless of who his grandfather had been. For someone at the very bottom, this was not a small thing. This was everything. Because for the first time in the history of the Mongolian steppe, the ceiling above your head had a door in it. And that door opened for exactly one thing: performance.
Rank 2, Sireg. You ride before you can properly walk. This is not an exaggeration. Mongol children were placed on horses as toddlers. By the time you are 4 or 5 years old, you can ride independently. By the time you are 8, you are hunting on horseback with a bow. By the time you are old enough to fight, the horse is not a vehicle you use. The horse is an extension of your body that you have been practicing with for your entire conscious life. This is why Mongol cavalry was like nothing anyone else had ever encountered. European knights trained for years to be effective in combat. Japanese samurai trained for years. Roman cavalry trained extensively. But none of them had been riding since before they could form clear memories. The Mongol warrior's relationship with the horse was built into muscle memory so deep that it could not be replicated by any amount of adult training. As a Tsereg, you are part of the most mobile army in history. You can cover ground that other armies consider impassable.
You can march 60 miles in a day and arrive ready to fight. You carry everything you need on your horse: your shelter, your food, your spare arrows, the dried meat and fermented mare's milk that sustain you across weeks of rapid movement without a supply line. The bow is your primary weapon. Not the sword, not the lance. The bow. The Mongol composite bow was one of the most technologically sophisticated weapons of the medieval world. Made from layers of bone, wood, and sinew, it was shorter than other bows, necessary for use on horseback, but its power and range exceeded almost every other bow in existence. You trained with it for hours every day. You shot from horseback at full gallop. You shot backward over your horse's rump while pretending to flee. The famous Parthian shot, the feigned retreat that lured pursuing enemies into ambushes that destroyed them completely.
The feigned retreat is worth understanding because it tells you everything about how the Mongol mind approached warfare. They did not just fight better, they thought differently. They were willing to appear to lose in order to actually win. They accepted short-term shame, the appearance of fleeing, in exchange for long-term, total victory. Most armies could not execute this because most warriors' pride would not allow them to pretend to run. The Mongols had no such pride to wound. They had only the objective: win, by whatever method worked.
Rank 3, Arbon. You have proven yourself in battle, and you have been given 10 men. 10. It sounds small. It was not. The Arbon was the foundational unit of the entire Mongol military system. GenghisKhan organized his army in a decimal structure that was a masterpiece of military engineering. 10 men formed an Arbon. 10 Arbons formed a Zun, 100 men. 10 Zuns formed a Mingon, 1,000 men. 10 Mingons formed a Tumen, 10,000 warriors, the great division of the Mongol army. Every level of this structure was commanded by an officer who was personally responsible for the people under them. Not responsible in a bureaucratic sense, personally, physically, directly responsible. If your 10 men failed, you failed. If your 10 men succeeded beyond expectation, you were the reason. The accountability went all the way up and all the way down the chain. As an Arbon commander, you knew every one of your 10 men completely. Their strengths and their weaknesses. Which of them was best at the Parthian shot? Which of them was the best night rider? Which of them needed to be pushed and which of them needed to be trusted to push themselves?
The Arbon also functioned as something deeper than a military unit. It was a mutual survival pact. If one man in your Arbon fled from battle, all 10 were punished. If one man was captured, all 10 were responsible for his recovery. If one man died through the failure of the others to protect him, the consequences fell on the group. This system created a bond between the 10 men of an Arbon that was arguably stronger than any family tie. You did not let your Arbon brother fall, not because of love necessarily, though that came, but because his falling meant your failing. The structure made individual cowardice mathematically impossible without affecting everyone around you. It was a system of enforced mutual courage, and it worked better than any other military motivation system in history. The Mongol army, built from 10,000 Arbons, was the most effective fighting force the medieval world ever produced, and it all started with 10 men and the one person responsible for them. That was you now, and those 10 people were watching every decision you made.
1,000 men. Move when you say move. Stop when you say stop. Attack from the left flank, feign retreat, circle back and hit from the right. All on your command. All executed with the precision of a single organism that you have spent years building. The Mingan commander was the backbone of Mongol operational leadership. Not a general planning strategy at the top. Not a squad leader executing tactics at the bottom. The Mingan commander was the person who translated the Great Khan's strategic vision into the specific actions of real human beings on a real battlefield. And you did not get here through your family.
This is the part of the Mongol system that most people find almost impossible to believe. In every other medieval military system, Chinese, European, Persian, Japanese, command positions above a certain level were reserved for people of noble birth. The idea of a common warrior rising to command 1,000 men based purely on demonstrated excellence was radical to the point of being unthinkable. Genghis Khan did not just allow it, he required it.
He promoted the most capable men regardless of origin. His greatest generals came from across the social spectrum. Subutai, arguably the greatest military mind the Mongol Empire produced, began as a common warrior with no special status. Jebi began as an enemy archer who shot Genghis Khan's horse from under him during a battle and was so impressed by his own honesty in admitting it when captured that Genghis Khan made him an officer on the spot. Think about that for a moment. The man who tried to kill Genghis Khan was promoted because he had the courage and honesty to admit it. That is the Mongol meritocracy in its most concentrated form. Not what you were born, what you actually were, what you actually did, how you actually behaved when everything was at stake. As a Mingin commander, you understood this better than anyone. You had lived it. You had started from nothing and built yourself to this through performance that left no room for excuses. And you knew that the man above you, watching your 1,000, had started the same way. Rank 5. Noyan. The Noyan were the inner circle, commanders of Tumans, 10,000 warriors, and the architects of the campaigns that changed the shape of the world. These were not men who sat at the back and pointed at maps. The great Mongol generals rode at the front of their forces. They made decisions in the field with incomplete information, under extreme pressure, and they made them faster and better than anyone else of their era. By the time the Mongol army arrived, the Noyan already knew more about the target than many of its own defenders did. Then came the offer. Every city that surrendered peacefully was spared and integrated into the growing empire. Trade continued. Local administrators often kept their positions. Life went on, under Mongol authority, but without destruction. Every city that resisted was destroyed so completely that the destruction itself became a weapon. The stories of what happened to cities that refused surrender spread ahead of the Mongol advance, like a moving wall of fear. Armies surrendered without fighting. Gates opened before the first arrow was loosed. Because the calculus was simple, and the Noyan understood it perfectly. The threat of what we will do to those who resist is more powerful than the actual doing of it. Psychological warfare at continental scale, executed with the discipline and precision of a military machine that had been built and refined over decades of continuous war.
The Noyan who led these campaigns did not see themselves as destroyers. They saw themselves as builders. The Pax Mongolica, the Mongol peace that followed the conquests, created a period of relative stability and open trade across the largest land empire ever assembled. The Silk Road had never been safer or more traveled than under Mongol control. Destruction and creation in the same hands. The Noyan understood both completely. From a child who was a slave and owned nothing, to the architect of campaigns that rewrote the map of the world. That was your life in the Mongol warrior ranks. And here is what I want to leave you with.
The Mongol Empire, at its peak, stretched from the Pacific coast of China to the borders of Central Europe. It covered over 24 million square kilometers. It was built in less than a single human lifetime. Genghis Khan went from a slave child on the steppe to the ruler of the largest empire in history in under 60 years. How? Not because the Mongols were physically superior. They were not. Not because they had better weapons. In many cases, their enemies had more sophisticated equipment. Not because they outnumbered their opponents. They almost never did. They won
because of the system. Meritocracy that found the best person for every role, regardless of birth. Mobility that made every other army look like it was standing still. Intelligence gathering that ensured they knew the battlefield before they arrived. Psychological operations that turned their reputation into a weapon that fought before the army did. And a loyalty system built from the 10-man Arban up that made individual failure functionally impossible without collective consequences. It was not magic. It was engineering. Human engineering at a scale nobody had attempted before. Which rank would you have been in that world? The Hirachi, who found the door that had never existed before? The Tsarek, who rode since before memory and shot backward at full gallop? The Arban commander, responsible for 10 lives with everything that meant? Or the Noyan, who saw the entire board and moved pieces across it that most people could not even imagine? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.